I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity today to speak to best-selling young adult fantasy author Michael Pryor. Michael, welcome.
Hello, Michael. It's good to be here.
I understand you're about to release your 29th book, The Extinction Gambit. Why not tell us a little about it?
The Extinction Gambit? Well, where do I start? Suppose I start with the setting. We're talking about 1908 London, height of the Edwardian era, the apotheosis of the British Empire, time of great social ferment, social change, the time when London was the political and financial capital of the world. And it's also a very propitious time for my story because there are two great events happening in London in 1908. There is the Franco-British Exhibition, which is an enormous trade fair full of displays from all over the Commonwealth, all over the world, as well as sideshows and all sorts of entertainment everywhere. Enormously popular. And while that was running, the 1908 Summer Olympic Games were also being held at the same venue essentially. So London was certainly a place where there was a lot happening at that time. Just perfect for writing a story. And so I set the story in this particular era and introduced a couple of characters. We have Kingsley Ward, young man, 17 years old, and he has put his studies aside and decided to pursue a life on the stage as a deep need to be a professional magician and escapologist mostly. He likes the idea of challenging himself, a death-defying situation and bursting free. We also have Evadne Stevens, who he meets in his early days as the tyro performer. She is a juggler, extraordinary, intelligent, vivacious. She's also an old hero and proud of it. So she's an extraordinary character. And together they get involved in a series of adventures, set off when Kingsley's foster father is kidnapped, abducted, disappears, and he goes in search of him. Evadne insists on going along, unfortunately for Kingsley, because she's a highly competent young woman. And I can't say much more without going into spoiler territory, but let it be said that there is some world saving involved.
I see. That's a lot to pack into one book.
Yeah, it is a lot to pack into one book, but that's the sort of book that I write. There's an enormous number of things happening, enormous number of narrative threads, enormous numbers of comings and goings, and characters being involved in all sorts of situations that need a firm hand on the narrative too, I can tell you. It certainly puts me on my mettle.
Now, despite the Extinction Gambit being a fantasy, it has a distinctly historical context. Now, what sort of demands this place upon you as the writer in terms of preparation and research?
Yes, it is a fantasy, but it's what I do call historical fantasy. Because of the time it's set, it's often classed as a steampunk novel, but not something that I don't mind at all. Quite affectionate for steampunk. But the historical part of the background of the story is vital. I love my history. I always say history is a fantasy writer's best friend. Every story ever told is in history somewhere. And so sometimes it's my job to just sort of part the mists of history a little bit and delve, add some imagination, and I have my story unfolding in front of me. The particular time period that we're talking about in the Extinction Gambit lends itself to all sorts of wonderful storytelling. Because it's a time of manners and morals, it's a time of social change. It is old-fashioned, but it is the beginning of the modern world as well. And so I can pack an awful lot into my story of the Extinction Gambit.
Now, the Extinction Gambit comes hot on the heels of your best-selling Laws of Magic series, a book series, if I'm not mistaken. What's it like moving from one deeply immersive series and then having to begin another?
Yeah, the Extinction Gambit does come directly after the Laws of Magic. Now, that's an interesting experience because I lived with the Laws of Magic, the characters of the Laws of Magic, for nearly 8 years, and I got to know them very well. And I must admit they worked very, very hard for me too. And so when I came to write when I finished writing the last book and put it down, knowing that that was the end, that I was waving goodbye to the characters, it was a poignant moment. I did feel bereft when they went off on their own ways. I definitely had a sense that they were going to have their own adventures, and I just wasn't going to be there to document them anymore. And so, coming to write a new series that I did want to include, I did want to build on the work I've done with the Laws of Magic. We're still in roughly the same sort of milieu, that Edwardian period, which I find so attractive. So I didn't want to throw that away entirely. But I have taken the setting and made it a little bit more concrete. Laws of Magic, the setting was an alternative world. But this one is fairly and squarely our real, geographically, historically checkable world. So it does put extra pressure on me to get a number of factual things right. I can't fudge things with the Extinction Gambit. But when it all comes down to it, the setting is vital, but it's the characters. So as much as I love Aubrey and Caroline and George and Sophie and everybody else in the Laws of Magic, I couldn't just retread them. That wouldn't be fair to anybody, to just do pale versions or souped up versions of the wonderful characters in Laws of Magic. So I had to create characters who had their own strengths, their own being, their own vitality, and that was a considerable effort. It's an enormous amount of backstory for both Kingsley and for Evadne, and it took some time, but there is a point at which the characters do start to talk and their voice becomes clear. And that was the point when I was really ready to write, and the characters then carry the story through the outlandish and the outre and the extraordinary settings and adventures they go through. But it's the characters who have their own integrity that makes the difference. They are different from the characters in the Laws of Magic. In some ways they share some of the same characteristics, because I'm the one making them up, and I endorse things like loyalty and friendship and intelligence and kindness and cleverness, bravery, all of those things. They are values that I find particularly appealing and particularly praiseworthy. And so my characters tend to exhibit those sort of things. But they exhibit them in different ways, and that's part of the fun of writing a whole new series. A challenge, but a lot of fun.
Well, that was illuminating. I'd like to thank Michael.
Thank you, Michael. It must have been a real pleasure.
Stay tuned for another book chat with Michael Pryor.